Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Stacy and I hope you're having an amazing day. So it's that time of the month. We're doing my August wrap up. And basically this month I read 5 books, which is a lot for a month where I had to study. Let's do this. The first book that I read this month is actually a French book, which is by Cleopatra, Le blé en herbe. And this is like a short read. This is actually a classic. I don't usually read classics, but yeah, if you want to know what this is about, I don't know if they might have like a translation for this if you want to read it in English. It's about Philip and Vinca. They usually go to, I think, the south of France. This was a long time ago that I read this, but they go to basically like their beach house, and they every summer, and they go there and they just live by the beach, and they've known each other for like a lot of, since they were little. Basically their families just know each other. In this short story it just talks about Philip because they're like, it's a coming of age, you know, they're like teenagers, they're like 16 I think, and Philip just gets into a weird relationship with an older woman. But it is like, the thing between Philip and Vinca is that they feel a connection between the two. It's like an unspoken love they have for each other. But I feel like this book was basically very about like how women were viewed into like their sensual like you know how before in the 20th century people didn't really talk about women actually liking intercourse, you know. And I feel like this book talked about that in a certain point, in a very like way that I think in the 1920s shocked people. I feel like now it isn't that shocking anymore because we read about it, we watch it on Netflix all the time. And I think in 2023, because this book is 100 years old, in 2023 we know that women actually like sex, you know what I mean? So I feel like the topic of women and sex is kind of outdated now. So when I read it I wasn't really shocked by it, like, but I get why it was a shock factor in the 1920s. But the thing that actually made me like this book was the like innocent love they have, you know, the feeling of your first love when you're like a teenager. I feel like that Colot described that in such beautiful ways. Like the sentences in this were so beautiful. I don't usually read French, and I feel like the French language just has a way of formulating sentences that make them just so beautiful. Like I read some sentences in this and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty. Like the way she talks about love, unmatched. It took me a long time. I think I finished this in 2 days, but understanding was a bit, I still don't know if I understood the ending of the book, you know what I mean? So understanding it was a bit nah, because it's old French, but I still got like the gist of it. I looked it up to know if I got the gist of it, by the way, and I got it. Second book I read, we're back to English now, is Daisy Hates, the first book. The first Daisy Hates book, but the second book in the Magnolia universe. I gave this, I think, 4 stars. I gave Magnolia Parks also 4 stars, and I can't decide which one of these two I like the most, because I feel like a lot of people are like Magnolia like kind of girlies, but I think, I don't know, I think I'm more like of a Daisy kind of girly. I don't know. I enjoyed this a lot actually. It took me a lot of like time to read this. I think it took me like 3 weeks because I took a lot of breaks in between it. Like Christian and Daisy put me through a pain, like the ending of this, but also I feel like the ending, if you know what the ending is, was kind of understandable in that way. I enjoyed this a lot. I didn't expect to enjoy this a lot, but I can't wait to like continue and get to the last like Daisy Hates book. After Daisy I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. Beach Read is about Gus and January, and basically they're both like authors just January writes like women's fiction, they say in the book. It's like romance. She just writes happy books, and Gus kind of writes thriller, mystery, fiction kind of things, so not so happy books. They decide to swap genres and see which one of them like sells their book first. This book is so much more than that. I gave Betrayal a 4.5 stars. It didn't give me like the 5-star feeling, but I still enjoyed that book so much. Like, that book is so good, and I at heart am a Gus kind of girly. Like, I don't know, I feel like Gus and me, we like the same person, and I kind of read it at the same time as a friend of mine, and she read it and she was like, Stacy, Gus is so you. Like, Gus is me in every aspect of my like personality, the way he flirts and the way he goes through life. But the book, gee, their relationship, the way they talk to each other, and also like the character development they have, also their like separate issues they have. That's just Emily Henry, you know? She just does it every single time, and giving you like the most heartfelt romance with a bit of trauma. The next book that I read wasn't my favorite. I hated it, actually. I don't have a lot of these. I have a lot of like 3-star ratings, which is good, by the way, but I don't have a lot of 2 stars. And I gave Cleopatra and Frankenstein 2 stars. I read that 2 weeks ago, I think, and oh my god. I thought like the premise of the book was very interesting. Basically it is about Cleo, that is 25, and Frank, who is 40 something, and they get to know each other on New Year's Eve, and Cleo, basically her visa to stay in America is running out. Like, she has to go in a few months, and they decide to get married. And Frank is basically like a successful business owner. I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, I didn't know we were like reading a sugar daddy kind of type of thing. And I started reading, and I was enjoying it at the first 50 pages. But then when I hit the like 60-page mark, I was like, okay, I do not get where this book is going. I don't know what the message behind this is. I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of this book and what the plot is supposed to bring me. Like, I was reading, you basically go through a lot of POVs, but through the third person. It's like a lot of POVs. It is about Cleo and Frank, but also about their friends. You kind of see how their friends are like destroying themselves. They are all like very toxic people, like a lot of flaws. They all are very flawed people. Yeah, it dealt with a lot of issues, and I feel like that's what made it very confusing to me. I don't know, I couldn't connect to majority of the people, like majority of her friends, even though they're in their 20s like me. I was like, okay, they went through a lot of like character development when you talk about Frank and Cleo, and they learned to like what friendships are good for them and what people are good for them. That's what like I feel like I took out of it. But other than that, I was bored 90% of the book. The last book I read this month is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I started reading it right after I saw today talking is very exhausting. Directly after I saw Sarah Coley talk about it in her 5-star like video that she did. When she gave that 5 stars and I saw her reaction, I was like, okay, I need to read this. And the next day I started it because Cleopatra and Frankenstein put me in a book slump, and I needed something happy. Like, not in a book slump because I read that one, but it made me like dread reading. I didn't want to read because I forced myself to finish that book. If you're asking yourself why did you force yourself, because I wanted to mark it as read, and because I read like a lot of pages of it, I was like, okay, I'm already 100 pages in, so we're just gonna finish this. So after that one, I just needed fantasy. I needed high stakes, I needed tension, and banter, and that's what Powerless delivered. Basically, Powerless is about what's her name? Payton. It's about Payton, and yeah, Payton. We're just gonna say Payton. They basically live in a world where there's elites and ordinaries and other groups of people, but we're gonna stick to that. Elites have powers, like there's a variety of powers that people can have, and ordinaries have absolutely nothing. And in that kingdom, ordinaries, to be an ordinary is a death sentence, because if they find out you are one, you're dead. They're gonna kill you. So basically Payton is an ordinary, but no one knows. And there's like these trials that are like kind of like the Hunger Games that they do every year, I think. I don't know if they do them every year, but they do them, you know? And you get chosen to participate in those trials. And yeah, you guessed it, Payton is unfortunate to get chosen, and has to like survive in midst of people with like powers, basically. That's like basically the plot of the book, but the best part of the book is just the love interest. There's a lot of like tension and banter between the two that are so good. Like, I haven't read like this good of like this type of banter in so long. Like, I was giggling and kicking my feet and being shocked every 5 minutes they interacted. Like, every single time they interacted, the conversation was just the things he, like, the way he talks about her, it's just unmatched. Like, the quotes in that book, my god. So Powerless, I give Powerless 5 stars, because it was just, there wasn't one thing that I didn't like about it. It is a slow burn, and also not really a romance. I would say it's just a lot of tension. You know, it's an enemies to lovers. They're like enemies, real enemies, like enemies. They're not supposed to be together, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of tension between them, and the banter, and you know, they have feelings for each other, but they can't, you know what I mean? I gave it 5 stars because it has been so long that I giggled so much while reading it, and the book was just vibes and entertaining, you know what I mean? Like, the plot isn't the most, like, you know, I don't know, high fantasy thing, but like entertaining as, you know. So you need to read it, actually. If you like fantasy, if you like romantasy, you actually need to read that. It is a thicker book, but very worth it. So yeah, that was actually the last book that I read this month. If you liked it, you know what to do. And let me know in the comments what you read this month, or your opinions on the books that I read, if you have read them. And I'll see you next week. Yeah, okay, bye. Mwah.